Good evening, everybody. My name again, Galvin, and I'm happy to speak with you tonight. I'm going to be doing the presentation of the evening, and we are going to be about local government and the importance of local government tonight. And we're going to be our counties, Chatham, Orange, and Durham, and the seats of each of them to illustrate how local government works, hopefully how you can get involved. So here is the agenda. We're going to talk about North Carolina counties and how county governments and city governments work. And then hopefully by the end, you'll have a sense of how you can get involved. And then of course, we'll transition to the talk with the mayors, which will be great because we'll just have talked about their cities that they're leading. Okay, so North Carolina's Albemarle County is the first county in North Carolina. See, it was founded way back in the colonial period in the 17th century, eventually divided into several other counties. Counties that we're talking about tonight, of the three of them, Orange County is with Chatham close behind, and the town of Hillsboro was founded just in Orange County. And Durham County is the newbie in the group, not created from portions of Orange and Wake counties, but not until 1880. And I believe the city of Durham was chartered for that, but after the Civil War, which is actually, some interesting history of Durham. There are 100 counties in North Carolina. I don't know if I've ever been to all 100 of them. All citizens of North Carolina are also the citizens in North Carolina. And the essential and mandatory and optional services you get at that form of government comes from the state legislature. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Okay, so here is the structure of government local in North Carolina. As we said, have the counties, and then within each of the counties there are municipalities. North Carolina, the municipalities that we have, cities, towns, or villages. And both of those counties and municipalities are what is known as general purpose governments. But there also is a designation, special purpose government. And this is a government that would serve a more limited function, perhaps across a region and actually across other municipalities. So services like transportation, tourism, information, water and sewer, these might be things that would be designated special purpose governments. And a couple you might be familiar with would be like the RDU, Airport Authority in Orange County, Owasso, where people get their water and sewer from. Okay, so here we just have some information about responsibilities. Look over here, this is, the typical back in civics class in high school, you might remember learning about federalism and how the federal government and state governments share powers, delegated powers to the federal government, like printing currency, declaring war, and then state government powers that are called reserved powers, like establishing rules, conducting elections, etc. And then there are powers that they have as well that they would share. And then we have the local government, and they're going to have their own specific responsibility, I guess is a good way of saying it. As you can see over on the right side of the slide, the type local governments do. But again, their authority comes from the state government, the way it works in North Carolina. Okay, so a little bit more about the county governments. 100 of them again. They are the basic unit for providing governmental services. Most of these have urban areas, towns or cities, but also unincorporated areas. So for example, Chapel Hill is a town, but there are also unincorporated areas that have a address. So live in the town of Chapel Hill, you would pay town taxes to pay for police Hill. But if you live in an unincorporated area of Chapel Hill, which might actually be outside of Orange, then you wouldn't pay that tax because your county taxes are paying for the sheriff. So that in other places around North Carolina as well. Every county has a county seat. So you know, the mayors that we're going to hear from, they're representing the county seats of Chatham, Orange, and counties. And as the population of a county increases, or a part of a county increases, it's going to create a need for more services, and it may be the point that the state legislature would charter a new town or a new city to meet those services. And then local governments, the county has commissioners, town councils,
mayors.
It would set the policies for local government, oftentimes with a manager and staff to help with the administration of policies. And we'll follow up on that more in a minute too. Oh, I was going to say that when I was preparing this slide, I actually did look up, and maybe have an answer to this question later, to find out what the most recent town or city was that has in North Carolina. And I actually couldn't find that information, but I did find that just last fall, East Florida had its charter dissolved by the state legislature. So I guess it can go both ways. All right, so I've mentioned a couple times that the towns and the counties both get their authority. They derive their authority from the North Carolina General Assembly, the way our Constitution is set up. And that means North Carolina is not a home rule state. So the states can only, under the authority of the, these county governments can only act under the authority of state legislature. And the county governments can't do anything that would be in opposite to any statutes that the state government has put out there. And they have the power the state legislature designates. They have the power to levy taxes and pass ordinances, but it would all have to be approved coming through whatever the state statutes are. And a couple examples here. Hillsboro in 1993 requested to institute a 1% meal tax, their sales tax, and the state government, the general, agreed for that. And that money then tourism board in Hillsboro. On the other hand, the Durham Public School Board saw to use some school apartments for teachers at reduced rates. And the state government did not approve that, and so that has not happened, that project. All right, so now that we've seen how local governments are structured, what do they do? So here's some good examples of the service that would be provided by your local governments. The community that would come from local governments, and then of course they protect us from harm, respond to emergencies, enforce laws, etc. So lots of important work that gets done there. I'm sure the mayors will be able to talk about a little bit more. But I think sometimes we get caught up in national issues. We take for granted all of the important things that our local governments are doing for us as well, and with us. Okay, so here we just have a rundown of some of the major of county governments. So these would be things that that your county government provides directly. Could be the elections, court support, partial funding for public. The rest of it comes from the state, social services, public health, etc. And of course, we have the sheriff's office and the county jail, and then separately, different municipalities have a police force. So this slide is a little bit longer because these are things that both county governments and municipalities can do. They could be done by each thing, may not be done by one or the other, but this is a good example or good examples of things that could be provided by both county and local governments and municipalities. And then lastly in this section, the functions that are authorized for municipalities only. And certainly look at that, you might say cable's Spectrum, or a private company. But I think what it means is that they would have to go through the municipality for the permits, and they're regulated, etc., to be able to those localities. I like these side-by-side sides to sort of sum things up, so you can see how the municipal level sort of mirror each other in some ways, elected officials, and then hired administrative officials, different designations for different roles that they have. County commissioners, mayor, the school board would be on the council, etc., town councils and board of commissioners for some towns, and then administration officials as well, or boards. All right, so this slide looks a little bit complicated to start, but we just put here to give a good example of how that structure works. So this is an example from Chatham County, and the boxes that you see in green, those would be elected offices, like the sheriff's office, the 5 elected counselors, the register of deeds. And then the county commissioners are going to hire or appoint a county manager that is really overseeing the day-to-day and fulfilling the board of commissioners directives. Under the county manager, of course, are all these other offices that are going to be able to complete those administrative functions that are necessary. And then, of course, we have the separate Board of Education elected, and a soil and water conservation officer is elected as well. So we're giving the Chatham County. You would see similar things in Durham, Orange County, or any of the counties. They generally set up this way. Okay, and then here is a model municipal government. Again, these are cities, towns, and villages that have been chartered by the North Carolina Assembly. And they have 2 different models. Both of them start, of course, with the voters. In one model, they may elect a council that will set policies, and oftentimes there might be a mayor, but the member of the council. The other model is the voters elect a mayor and a council, and either of these, they could include a town or a city manager who would be by the mayor and the council. And then the state charter gives this municipality the authority that comes from the state legislature. State legislature also would be overseeing city and town finances. This slide is a little bit small probably for you to see, but the main thing we wanted to get this particular slide is comparing town of Hillsboro with the city of Durham, and essentially similar functions, but because the population of Durham is so much higher, you can see here in 2020, almost 300,000 people in Durham compared to under 10,000 in Hillsboro. Just with an increase in population, you're going to get an increase in complexity as well. So Hillsboro, we can look actually a close-up here. In Hillsboro, there's the Board of Commissioners and these different departments, essentially. In Durham, you have a city manager and the deputy city managers and other jobs, city attorney, city clerk. And actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to go. And another difference that you would notice here is that all of the town commissioners in Pittsboro are elected at large, whereas again in the larger city, there are at-large members and ward level members, as just sort of dealing with that extra complexity that comes with additional population. All right, and here down of the three municipalities that we're going to be focused on, and the three mayors kindly joined us tonight, Jenn Weaver of Hillsborough, Elaine O'Neal from Durham, and Cindy Perry from Pittsboro. And you can see elected, all of them relatively recently, and then the Board of Commissioners or City Council that they work with, and as a town manager or a city manager running the operations and implementing the board's policy. All right, so we have did the structures in general. We've looked at the structures of some of our local governments, and now we're going to talk a little bit about important functions of local government, is preparing the budget, and obviously any level of government, this federal, state, and local. And on the local level, essentially, they are going to evaluate which service we, the citizens of that locality, need or want, estimate how much that's going to cost, and then try to figure out how to raise and allocate those funds for that. And at the end of that, then the tax rate would be the coming year, and the priorities set for government. So very important function, and certainly something that just everybody is interested in how it's going to turn out with the tax rate. Okay, so again, a couple examples that we can look at. So this is the Orange County revenue pie chart. So this year, Orange County brought about $240,000. And you notice it's pretty obvious that the largest source of revenue for the county government is property taxes. Next at 10%. A couple of places, licensing and permits, investment earning, transfers from other parts of the budget, charges for services, that's high relatively speaking, to some of the others as well. So that's all revenue coming in to Orange County. And then this is what the expenses look like. And by far, again, the largest expenditure for the county government of North Carolina would be education. So nearly half of Orange County's budget expenditures. Human services following behind, general government, public safety. So you can see how they are divided. So 239,000 coming in, 239,000 going out, balanced budget. And then within Orange County, the town of Hillsborough is presented here. We've got the revenues and the expenditures page. You know, it's interesting to see that education is the major expenditure for the county government. The more local and municipal level, police is the largest expenditure at 27% Hillsborough. Fire protection, all these things that, you know, we obviously need and take advantage of. It's nice to know where they budget. And in the revenues, the prices and sales taxes is where the bulk of the revenue comes from, with a total about 13,000. Interestingly enough, the water and sewer budget and is almost as high as the budget altogether for the county. Wait just a second because information on that slide. All right, and then here is just a good, again, summary that comparing Orange County with Hillsborough, and you can see it's got the lowest expenditure up to the major expenditure, safety and education. So a really good comparison there, and a good reminder of the different roles that the county and the municipal government plays. All right, that all of this information, you know, reminding us of all that are important to us on a day-to-day basis, reminds us that it's so important to local elections. These are things that really are close to home, literally, and figure local schools, safe water, how much people pay in property taxes, policing, all of these. And another thing to consider is that many of these local government elected officials may move on to the state government and even the national government in some cases. So to know them early on and to be paying attention to what's going on the local level. But unfortunately, these very important elected offices are often on by just a small percent of the eligible voters. And this comparison on the right side between 2020 federal election in Orange County, Durham County, and Chatham County, the percentage of voters to the municipal election really, you know, is a sort of a stark visual, and hopefully people are, I think particularly with school board elections and things like that, are recognizing how important the local elections are as well, even when they come in off years or odd years. All right, so this brings us to the end of this part of the presentation, part of the evening. Again, you know, we hope you would want to get involved in government and learn more about your local government. So a good place to start is at the websites. All of the that we got, were easily accessible on the city, town, or county. We have here the websites of the 3 counties that we are representing. And you can certainly find the information for the city and the town municipalities as well. The transparency is there if you eager to look. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Krishna. She will introduce us to the 3 mayors who have joined us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen, for that presentation. And are there any questions for Maureen or for this part of the presentation? You can put them on the chat, but I don't see that there are any. Okay, then actually I'm going to turn it over to Ellen. Ellen, where are you? Ellen Rickle.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our special guest this evening. I'll begin with Elaine O'Neal. She has been mayor of Durham since December. While a new mayor, her roots are deep since she is a native of Durham, who has been active in the public realm for many years. Elaine attended North Carolina Central University, earning both her BS in math and Juris Doctor. She was a judge for 17 years and was the first woman in Durham County to be named Chief District Court Judge. And that was when I had the pleasure of getting to know Elaine well while I was a county commissioner in Durham. In 2011, she was elected the first woman Superior Court Judge in Durham County. Elaine retired from the bench in 2018 to lead the North Carolina Central University School of Law as interim dean. Next is Cindy Perry. She's a retired attorney serving her 3rd term as mayor of Pittsboro. A native of California and New York, Cindy came to Guilford College in the 1960s, fell in love with North Carolina and a fellow from Pittsboro, and the rest is history. Their 3 adult children live close by and have made campaigning a family activity. That was something that I did. It's a great thing to do. And I had the pleasure of getting acquainted with Cindy a couple of weeks ago. Jenn Weaver is in her 2nd term as mayor of Hillsboro and earlier served on the Hillsboro Town Council for 6 years. Jenn has prioritized issues of sustainability and equity in planning and policymaking. She is currently chair of the Durham Chapel Hill Carborough Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's a mouthful, but it's the group that does all of the regional transportation planning for our region. And she represents Hillsboro on the Upper Neuse River Basin Association. And I had the pleasure of working with Jenn on both of those bodies while I was in office. Jenn has a background in public policy and the nonprofit sector. She completed her undergraduate degree at Prescott College and her master's degree in political science at UNC Chapel Hill. And now, we are going to get to our discussion. And we have several questions, and we're going to basically take turns. I've asked that our mayors speak for no more than 2 minutes in response. Actually, I think what we'll do is do 2 minutes for the first 4 questions, then perhaps have a lightning round on some of the later questions that I think are less complex. I would encourage our attendees to put any questions for the mayors in the chat as they think of them while we're talking. So we'll start out with what was the most important thing or things that inspired you to run for local government office? And I'll ask Elaine to answer that question first.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with the League of Women Voters, and a special thanks to my good friend Ellen Reckow, who's one of my heroes and mentors during this process. I'm happy to be here this evening, and I've thought about that question, and basically I think what really inspired me was my love for Durham. It is my hometown, and I've been trained here and educated here and have been lucky enough to lead in a number of public arenas. For this particular venture or assignment, it was the 24 years that I served as a judge at both the district court and superior court levels, and the things that I saw. As you know, the court system is pretty much reactive in a lot of situations, and this provided me an opportunity to be on the other side and be proactive in this space. So that pretty much, watching the young people that I have worked with over the years and the needs that they have that had gone unaddressed from my inability to address them as a judge, I thought on this side I may be able to be more proactive and help to try to provide some of the basic things that they needed to have the kind of life that I've had in Durham.
Thank you. Cindy?
Well, my story is very similar in that, having practiced law in this community for 25 years, when I retired in 2017, I didn't miss the work as much as I missed the people. And that was what inspired me to run for my first term in 2015. Took 2 terms there, and left in 2019. And again, although I left for good reasons to work with other organizations in the town, notably the domestic violence group, it's one of those things that just gets under your skin, and you feel a real compulsion to, especially in a town like Pittsboro, which is so small that you know, people stop me in the grocery store, stop me on the street. There's a pothole, or their garbage didn't get picked up, or whatever. And it's a real community of people to serve. And I just thoroughly enjoyed doing those kinds of things with the people of Pittsboro.
Thank you. Jenn?
Well, I was brought up as a local government is important nerd. My mother, I grew up in Charlotte, and my mother was always involved in local politics. So I grew up stuffing envelopes and sometimes answering the phone at campaign offices as a kid. And so that it was just ingrained in me that local government matters, and it's something you should pay attention to. And living in Hillsboro, I had, you know, my path is very familiar to many people who end up running for the town board level, which is that I started on a volunteer advisory board, and I just enjoyed getting to know more about how this particular town worked and what the vision was and what people were doing. And then two longtime town board members decided not to run again. And then several people in the community asked me if I would consider running for one of those seats. And I think they asked me because I was involved with the town and they knew that I cared about local government. So I think that's a familiar story to a lot of folks who take that path.
Thank you. Okay, Cindy, we'll start with you on the second question. What surprised you about your role as mayor? You need to unmute.
Thank you. I think the thing that surprised me the most was the broad spectrum of responsibilities and issues that we need to be involved in. There's everything from sewer to to property taxes, to those potholes that I talked about a moment ago, and the trying to move forward on specific things like climate. That was one of the things I was extremely interested in, had no background, but I certainly took advantage of some opportunities while I was mayor in the first 2 terms to learn a little bit about climate. But the broad variety of things that you come in contact with, and each of them is their own fairly complex bureaucracy. For example, dealing with the Department of Transportation, the DOT is, there's just, to me, there's not another bureaucracy like it. It is so complex. And we have so many needs here in Pittsboro, being at the junction of 2 United States highways, federal highways, that a lot of the interworkings of our town streets are interconnected with those, with 15501 and US 64. So understanding the bureaucracy of DOT is almost a lifetime in and of itself. But I would say that just the breadth of knowledge that one has to have, you know, like in the law, as Elaine knows, that it's the kind of thing that you sometimes have to say, well, I'll have to research that, or I'll have to check on that with my manager or whatever. And we're very fortunate to have excellent leadership here in Pittsboro with our town manager, who has a firm grasp on a number of these bureaucracies.
Thank you. Jen, what surprised you?
Well, I think one of the things that surprised me in the transition from serving as a town commissioner for 6 years and then moving into the mayor's role was really being struck by how the public views the mayor as this singular, very powerful position. that the mayor of Hillsborough is the same as the mayor of Charlotte, is the same as the New York City, you know, that it's just a matter of size, but other than that, we're the same. And, you know, in Hillsborough, the mayor doesn't have a vote. So it's really interesting, just the authority that people place in that. And I also tend to have, my leadership style is less hierarchical and more collaborative. And so sometimes that is interesting to navigate as people, their instinct is to, well, what does the mayor want? What does the mayor want to do? And I'm coming at it from a slightly different way. And it's all fine. And it has its benefits and challenges that come together.
Thanks. And last but not least, we have Elaine. What has surprised you in the last couple of months, Elaine?
Well, I can agree with both of these ladies. And it's amazing that we were, you know, we almost speak the same language, which is really good. And the same words that Cindy was using, you know, the breadth and the complexities of the job and the running of the city itself. Thank God we have a great city. We have great city workers. We have a great city manager, and our city is well run. But just the sheer enormity of the issues that come before them on a daily basis, and how you kind of have to be able to prioritize as you're learning. It seems as though once you take that oath, there's an automatic assumption that you know all things mayor. And so I wasn't given, you know, on most jobs, we have a 90-day learning curve, you know, a 90-day orientation. Not so as mayor. Day one, people are expecting that you know, and if you don't know, you can find the answer. Meanwhile, you're trying to do that. Also, you know, in Durham, I do have a vote, but it's 1 of 7. So when you have the title of mayor, I guess the best platform that you have is the bully pulpit. You can talk a lot, but your actions to move things requires a majority vote. So just the fact that people think that because you're mayor, you can automatically move and make things move in a direction that whatever the person seems to think that they want you to move, and you're unable to do that because you're dealing with a bureaucracy. So it's been a combination of things over these last a little bit over 60 days.
Thank you all for your candid observations. We'll now go to the next question. Jen will be first, and that is, what is the biggest challenge facing your jurisdiction? How do you think you and your board will address it?
I have a feeling we're going to have very similar answers on this, but we'll see. So my overarching answer, so I think that climate change is the umbrella that goes over everything, that really affects everything that we do, from water and sewer to stormwater to planning and zoning and transportation. It's just over everything. And I think we can't even predict the ways that what is happening in other parts of the country with climate change may end up impacting our own communities. So that's just a big thing we're contending with. And then more immediately is affordability. And we are a popular place to live, and every single thing we do to make it a nice place to live means it makes it more out of reach for more and more people. And that is not the kind of community we wish to be. And then the last thing I will add to that is water and sewer. Hillsboro has our own water and sewer utility, and we take very good care of it, and it costs a lot of money to run it. And we are a small town and don't really have an economy of scale. So that's a heavy burden on our residents and businesses as far as cost goes. And our sewer capacity is, we're getting very close to being at capacity. So we have some real growth challenges there, which again affects affordability.
Okay. We'll now go to Elaine.
Well, in Durham, our big issue is probably something that's well known to everybody, and that's crime. That's one of our primary issues that I'm faced with every single day as a judge now and as a mayor. And the second issue would be affordable housing, which is tied to that. You have a lot of crime that's happening in our most distressed communities, and transportation is also tied to that, and job opportunities for those who are not enjoying an economic boom. And overlaying all that, of course, is COVID. We're still very much in a pandemic, and there are people who want us to think that we're at the endemic, but we're still very much in the pandemic stage. So that colors how we interact with each other in an everyday situation. So we have a number of challenges, but I think that we are moving forward on all of those fronts to address it at a street level as well as at a governmental level. It takes a community to solve a lot of these problems. It won't be solved by government alone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And last, we have Cindy.
Infrastructure is our biggest problem right now, partly because our systems were very old and leaky, and really in many respects we're not prepared for the amazing amount of growth that now Pittsboro faces with the advent of Chatham Park, the 7,000 acre planned community, which is slowly beginning to take shape around the north and eastern part of Pittsboro. We'll be bringing those parts of Chatham Park in as we annex them, as they develop, and we're going to end up being a very, very large town with a small town infrastructure. Notably, also, as a part of that infrastructure is our issue with water and sewer. We are totally out of sewer at this point. We are in the midst of negotiating and constructing and acquiring a force main sewer connection to the town of Sanford, 17 miles below us. And our water is somewhat notorious, shall we say, in that we are the first drinkers of Haw River water downstream from the industrial centers of Burlington and Greensboro. And we have struggled not only with the PFAS and PFOA, but also with distributions and discharges of 1,4-dioxane, which is an unregulated chemical, which is a very dangerous suspected carcinogen. The town is beginning to make progress with respect to filtration issues at the water plant to get some of these chemicals out of our systems. But it is a huge project in that it not only takes the determination of the town of Pittsboro, but it takes the determination of upstream, downstream neighbors, the state and the federal government. And it's a tricky balancing act to put forward the idea that you really need help from your neighbors in order to have good, clean water, but without putting so much pressure on them that they turn and go back the other way, thinking that you're being too demanding. It's a very tricky inter-municipality issue. And it's taken us a long time to get to a point where we had the kind of cooperation that we need to have. We do now have Congressman David Price was just in our midst recently, and he is trying to help with water associated funding for us. And we are having to one of the environmental organizations here has brought suit against the town of Greensboro, city of Greensboro, to try to improve discharge issues. So there's a multiplicity of very complicated infrastructure issues. And the thing about infrastructure is that it's not fun talking, you know, it's all very serious. And there's nothing sexy about infrastructure. So I'd love to be working on things other than that, but this is the most important thing for Pittsboro right now.
Thank you. Sounds like you are all going to be very busy going forward. Now we'd like to ask, and I'll start with Elaine, what do you see as the most important future opportunity for your jurisdiction? And as mayor, how will you provide leadership on it?
Well, that question is really easy kind of to answer for me, but hard to carry out. And that would be to provide a safe, affordable, clean, living environment for each of our citizens, for each resident, that they have a safe place to live, that it is affordable, and that it is clean. Now, how do I provide leadership? Trying to do things in these different arenas. Well, the first thing that I did today is I've decided and met with staff to start a Stop Littering campaign. I think that's one of the easiest ways that we can get our community involved. I've been asking from the beginning of my campaign that people start to think about how they can give 2.5 to 5 hours a week of community service. And that is as easy as going outside and picking up trash. I was told today that cigarettes are the #1 littered object. And so just picking up, not throwing cigarette butts out, not throwing bags out. So just making a safe, a clean environment. The second, of course, is safety. Everybody wants to be able to go into their home where they live and feel safe in that environment and be able to move around the city safely. So how have I been combating that and providing leadership there where, I spent 24 years in that arena dealing with a lot of young people who came into contact with that system. So I have been going out and talking directly to some of those young folks in an effort to have a ceasefire here in Durham. And we've been we've had favorable results, but as you know, we're still having issues in that arena. So that is a continued process of building relationships with people who have traditionally not trusted government. And so I've been trying to forge those relationships because of my past relationships. Affordability, that's a big one. That's a big bugaboo around housing and jobs. So how do you interact in those systems? One is to try to see what the city can offer to help developers to come into our town and provide spaces for people to live that they can afford, that's not at the high end of things. And also the other side of that is to get our residents to participate in opportunities that will allow them to get jobs in some of the industries that are coming up around Durham, the pharmaceutical industry. We know Google is coming, we know Apple is coming. So those and getting them ready to step into those arenas so that affordability then becomes an easier fix in terms of their ability to get some of those jobs. So fairly easy to say, very much complex to accomplish.
Very much. Thank you. Cindy, what is your most important future opportunity and how will you provide leadership?
When I first ran in 2015, someone came to me at a meet the candidates and said, what are you going to do about climate? And I sort of shook my head thinking, what can a town of 4,500 people, which is what Pittsboro is these days, what can we do in a vast world of petrochemicals and all kinds of challenges on the climate? But our challenge is this. We have roughly 65% of our county empties out every morning and drives to Orange County or Durham County or Raleigh or RTP to work. And so it's a unique imprint. Our inventory of climate issues is led far and away by transportation. And these cars flowing out to take advantage of the good jobs in your jurisdictions is a real problem, because trying to get an American to give up their wonderful car and go to mass transit is a very difficult thing. But Chatham Park is going to be offering in the future clean tech industries here as a part of the huge subdivision, huge project that they are proposing. And that's going to be hopefully something that will be able to keep our people in our county driving less, earning more, and that hopefully will be able to bring us to a more responsible climate position. But there are things and little things that we can do. I had a Girl Scout troop not long ago that was trying to get people to give up straws. Just the little things for little towns like mine that can hopefully make a big difference. And I'm going to be out there picking up the trash along with them. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least is Jenn.
I think the biggest upcoming opportunity for us beyond completing our comprehensive sustainability plan, which will be that's undergoing, and that will be really important just for the planning future of our community, but is our train station. So as part of the Orange County transit tax that was passed in 2012, a portion of that was allocated to build a train station in Hillsboro. And it's not just a train station in my mind, because we also just approved funding for a study that will study a multimodal path that would, because one of Hillsboro's challenges is that our town is built right across both a railroad track and a river. And so any kind of transportation issues it just makes everything very, very hard because it's just hard to get across those two things that are there. So if we could, in the long term, have the train station built and have this path that connects downtown, gets over the river and the railroad track to the train station, and then it would extend all the way down. I don't know how many of you know Hillsboro, but all the way down to Waterstone, which is a large neighborhood at the south end of town. That would be transformative in multiple ways for our community. We have 21,000 trips that go through town every single day. And the vast majority of that traffic are people who don't live in town. They are coming from north of town down through Hillsboro to get to the job centers in Durham and Chapel Hill and RTP, or to get to the hospitals. You know, that's what they're doing. They're driving through. And so there is, Trenton Street is very congested. And in my mind, the only way to really get at that, to make our community function the way we envision, is to get more people who live here out of their cars, so that those who are physically able can walk more places and bike more places. And it could just, the way I see how that could change things for us is, it's really exciting, and it is a long game, combined with the train station, which will be an Amtrak stop, and then, but it will set us up for commuter rail in the long term, which is farther down the road for us than it is for Durham and Wake, but still hope that we will be on that line eventually, which is, you know, helping with access to, you know, the things that Elaine was talking about, with access to jobs and just being able to get the places people need to go. So my role as mayor is to really help our community keep the eyes on the prize, because those kinds of long-term, thankfully, the train station is, we have to have that built within 5 years. So that is becoming more and more tangible every day. But transportation planning, and Ellen knows so well that transportation, especially multimodal transportation planning in North Carolina, is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
It is, there's so little money to do anything that doesn't involve a road or cars, as Mayor Perry was alluding to, you know, getting people out of their cars. The vast majority of the dollars go to that. And it is non-linear. You know, we have this setup that seems like, you know, a state funding process that sort of looks linear on paper, but it really isn't when you're looking at how it works in the community in combination with all the other planning and development that you're doing. So it's confusing to the community. It is frustrating to the community. And so it's a very, very big job for me, I think, to help people understand it and keep the faith and see the vision.
Wow. I want to say all three of you just really did a great job with those answers, and have me personally excited, because I see a tremendous amount of vision and leadership in all three of your answers. So I wish you a tremendous amount of luck moving forward, because everything you outlined is so important for your communities. But this is a good segue, because we're now going to move into some questions where the league wants to help encourage and promote our members and other citizens who are on the call to get more engaged with government, and to be helping you with these wonderful challenges and important challenges, but also these wonderful opportunities that you describe. So we don't want to give them short shrift, but I'd like you to be a little more concise, maybe more towards a minute with your answers. But let's talk about how citizens can get more involved. So we'll start with Cindy. How do you recommend interested citizens get involved with Pittsboro government and help you out with some of the initiatives that you've outlined?
A couple of things come to mind. One of them first is work on somebody's campaign. It's a delightful way to learn your community even better. It's a good way to understand the mechanics of municipal government. And as was said earlier, this is the government that has the closest attachment, the closest connection to its citizens. And it's only right and proper that this should be a goal of people who are interested in their community. We're getting ready to develop something called a citizens cabinet, which would take, we have a tremendous retired community. Getting people from the retirement community to come and study a question, to take a close, deeper dive on issues, and then report back. Task forces often do that same kind of thing. and advisory committees. We have a recreation advisory committee that's very active in the community. So those are the kinds of things that can help pull people in to enjoying work in municipal government.
Great. Elaine?
We have a plethora of things: boards, commissions, task force. Also, we have Partners Against Crime. So every Durham resident is a member of a PAC. And so it's a matter of becoming involved with a PAC, which is a close alignment with Durham city government in particular. And also one of the boards I like to highlight is one that Ellen started that we're reinstating, which is the Durham Crime Cabinet. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of boards who have been very, very active and very instrumental in moving things along. So any of our boards, any of our commissions, any variety of task force, and your PACs.
Great. And Jen?
Certainly getting involved in volunteer advisory boards. I think that's just a great entry into local government, and finding one that interests you and then really figuring out how it works in the context of your community is awesome. And it's always needed. You know, we always need great people to be on those. And then I think also for small towns like Hillsboro, and I'm guessing for probably like Pittsboro too, is we don't have the capacity for programming. You know, we don't have a arts and culture department. And so, and that's a place, I mean, thankfully we're an artist community, so we have a great Hillsboro Arts Council, but getting involved in other civic activities, I think is so critical for all of our communities for fostering the kinds of places that we really want to live. And, you know, for us, we really lean on those community, you know, non-government groups to do so many of the things that people find attractive about Hillsboro. And I also think that something is organizing around an issue that you care about. I'll just speak frankly and say that that's something I think Hillsboro could use a little more of. Is people, I know that there's people that really care about particular issues, and I just want them to get together and, you know, and then engage with the town in a way. So always acting on what you care about is going to make a difference.
Okay, and I'm going to keep you up, Jen, on this, go first on this next question. Can you give an example of citizens having a major impact on a decision of your board?
I'll go back to
we're trying to inspire citizens that they can have an impact.
I will go back to the train station. The train station was the brainchild of a couple residents in Hillsboro that they started talking about, they felt passionate about, they really wanted it. And then when people started talking about the transit tax, they really were able to advocate and get our community excited about the train station. And it made it in, and it's happening.
Good, great example. Okay, Elaine, do you have an example of something citizens have had an impact on?
Yes, the raising of salaries for our local police officers and our firefighters, which was really a hot button item here in Durham. Had a lot of community input. We have been in this state where there was a sort of a disconnect between folk who wanted to kind of defund the police, but the public pretty much silenced that voice, so to speak. And they were very adamant that we make sure that our police officers and our firefighters were receiving adequate compensation for the jobs that they were doing. So that just recently passed, maybe 2 council meetings ago, and we've gotten great feedback from our community as a result of that.
Hear, hear. Okay, and Cindy.
I think one of the things that was the most outstanding in the last few years was something called Dinner on Main, which they lined tables up and down Main Street, and we all sat down. Obviously, this was before COVID, and sat down and had an absolutely wonderful dinner that was produced by local restaurants, from local produce, local farmers, and it seemed like one of those impossible tasks to feed a couple hundred people at one time, but you just never know until you try. And so that was probably one of the most exciting events that we had. But just people paying attention to the meetings. We have a woman that follows our agenda very carefully, studies it very carefully, and almost always, writes a really thoughtful memo about something that she saw or thinks that we might not need to take a closer look at. And it's just amazing. I value that. I value her time and her interest, and it helps me oftentimes. I'm also a non-voting mayor, Jen.
Great, good answers. Okay, moving right along. Elaine, you're going to be first. What is the best way to communicate with you and your board?
We're at our city council meetings. We always have a portion of public hearing where you can speak to a specific agenda item or anything that's non-specific. And so you just basically sign up and you're able to speak to us. Also, we are fairly active on emails individually. And of course, you can send them to us as a group, but to speak to us as a body, the best way is through our public hearings.
Okay. Cindy, what's the best way
Yes,
to communicate with you and your board?
At every meeting, we have a public comment period, and it is a very important part. It's early in the meeting so that people can have their say and go on and eat their dinner or put the kids to bed. And it's a very important time for us as elected officials, as well as to hear the comments and thoughts. So we're all excellent on email and texting, and I just thank goodness for modern communications, because it makes it so much easier.
Okay, and Jen?
My broad answer is directly, whether it's directly at a public meeting or via email or a phone call. Myself and our board members are all really accessible. We can't know what's happening if people aren't, letting us know what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Great. And lastly, let's say people are really inspired and are going to begin to think about running for public office, a local office. What do you think is the best preparation to run? And we'll start with Cindy.
I think I already spoke about the importance of working on somebody's campaign, but certainly attending the meetings. If you are not interested enough to really dive deep into the issues and attend the meetings in the 6 months before your term would start, nobody's going to take you seriously, because as we've already said, there's so many complex issues. It's going to take that kind of time and commitment. We're trying very hard in Pittsboro to look for young persons to be interested in government and running for public office. Young people, people of color, and I'm really hopeful that we can make the transition from the good old boy network to much better representation in diversity.
Okay, Jen?
I think advisory boards, again, are just a great way to get involved and get a feel for things. And also just knowing that you need to care about your community. You need to be interested in understanding how local government works, but you don't need any special background or particular thing, which I think is something that holds many people back from public service at the local level, is they think we all have some special knowledge, but we're all just regular folks who got involved and took it from there.
Mm-hmm. And Elaine?
For me, I think that learning and knowing my community was key. Pretty much all, I've never lived anywhere else. So I think that it helped a lot that I know a lot of people all across Durham, in all areas of Durham. So learning my community and finding out what people are passionate about, what do they care about And for me, most importantly, is one of the things that I learned as a judge is the ability to be able to listen to people. You know, a lot of people just want to be heard. So you have to develop listening skills and just allowing people to have that space without, you know, having a lot of comment about it, but just kind of taking it in and being able to listen to them.
Mhm. Well, this has been a great discussion. I think there may be some questions that have come in. I'm going to turn it over to Janie to see what questions she may have from our attendees.
Thank you, Ellen. And I just want to echo Ellen's comments about we are so appreciative of the three of you, Cindy, Elaine, and Jenn, being here and hearing your enthusiasm and your care for your communities. It just came out in your honest answers. So we have about 3 questions, and if we can try to have each of you answer those in about 10 or 15 minutes, that would be great. The first one, I'll do these in a little bit different order than that they came in. Did any of you face, this is from Jan, did any of you face particular challenges because you are a woman in your position? And why don't we start? I see Elaine smiling there. Why don't we start with you, Elaine?
Well, I think it's a combination of 2 for me. It's the fact that I'm a woman and I'm the first Black woman. So I have been just overwhelmed with the sheer response. I'm a sort of an introvert by nature. I can stay in my house for weeks and not come out. So, and you know, you can't do that as a politician, even in COVID. You got to be out and amongst people. So I don't know that I face particular challenges about it, other than the fact that I sometimes feel like I'm a museum object that people want to touch, feel, talk to me, and they don't want to talk to my staff. They want, not that I have a large staff, I have 1 assistant. They want to talk to me, and they want to talk to me now, and they want me to come and see them at wherever they're at. So I've been kind of overwhelmed by that. And I think that's probably because I am the first. So that's been a challenge for me.
Yeah, thank you. And Cindy, how about you?
Well, I'm not the first woman mayor, but I did have an interesting experience one time when my husband and I drove up to a meeting, and we got out of the car, and the person came up to my husband and said, "Oh, I understand you're the mayor of Pittsboro." And of course, the presumption always is that the man is the elected official, and it's he laughed it off, and it's taken a while for me to forget that, because I think that it's just one of those things that I would like for there to have been not to have that presumption. So that I think there are challenges, but the fact that we're also attorneys as well, Elaine, we're probably used to that as well, because how many times have I gotten, thought to be my own legal secretary? So.
Yes, well, and we hope that with the 3 of you, you're changing that perception slowly and surely. And Jenn.
When I was running for town board and I was canvassing door to door, I had several people sort of flummoxed at why I was running for town board and not for school board, which seemed like a non sequitur to me. And that is not disparaging at all on members. My goodness, our school board members they've got the hardest job these days of anybody. But it felt very gendered. And then I had young children at the time when I was first running, and I had several people really want to query me about, did I understand, the impact it was going to have, the time it was going to take, away from my young children to serve in public office. And I know that my male counterparts were never asked that question because I've asked them. I think that there's something that probably all women experience in the many circles we navigate is I receive a lot of unsolicited advice. And I think that it's interesting because in reference to something Mayor O'Neal said that I think is very, very important is it's really important to be a good listener. And I think that there's a lot of psychological energy that goes into wondering, am I being mansplained or do I really need to listen to this person? So it's just, there's just a lot of energy I would rather spend on something else, I think. But I want to say I work with lots of great people and certainly serving in Orange County is a great place to be.
Thank you. And Jen, if you don't mind carrying on with the next question first, Caroline has asked how is that you've noticed an effect, or what is the effect and impact of having the students, so the proximity of the students and the challenge of advocating and adding affordable housing in the community?
Well, Hillsborough is certainly one step removed from that. But I think that when I think about affordable housing and I think about the UNC students, they are also residents. So I don't really think of them as separate from the town. They are residents of Chapel Hill and of Carborough, and we've got a few in Hillsborough, but they are residents and they need affordable housing just like everyone else. And it does also contribute, I saw the comment in there, that tension of pushing out, students pushing out long-term residents. And I'm not sure if this is directly answering that question, but I will say that I have observed over time that there has been an effect of, as Carborough and Chapel Hill started to price people out, they moved to people started looking to Hillsborough. And so now Hillsborough is getting to the point where it's starting to price people out. So there, affordable housing is, I feel like it's a regional problem. And if any improvement on affordable housing in any of our communities in our county between the 3 municipalities is a positive for the others. And then an editorial note is, I do think that UNC should take some of that endowment they have and put it towards affordable housing in their community.
Thank you. And Elaine, would you like to comment on that in Durham?
Sure. We are home to Duke University, North Carolina Central University, and Durham Tech. So we have a very large post-high school graduate population, but as Jen stated, it's really regional in nature and citywide. The affordability problem, for instance, a couple of days ago when I was meeting with our affordable housing staff, they quoted a stat that I really haven't been able to get out of my mind, and that was that we had 3,300 plus vacant apartments, and of that we had only 116 one-bedroom units only at $900. So you see how wide the gap is and the numbers, and that was astounding to me. So it is definitely a community-wide problem, and of course our students are feeling that as well. Our community college recently announced that they are trying to get monies to start some affordable housing on their campus. So they are recognizing the needs that the students have, and they are also, pushing in that arena to provide some support and help for their students. But it's what I call, it's a bugaboo. That's what I call it. And it's almost like intractable. How do you solve this particular issue across the board for all of our residents?
Yes, yes. And Cindy, if you have anything you'd like to add, we will also move into the next question, which is on a little bit lighter note. We'll begin to wrap up here. This will be our last question. And it is about parks and natural areas in your communities. especially during the pandemic that we've all been going through. Do you have any favorite parks or nature areas, or any that you would recommend to local residents? So we'll start with you, Cindy.
I definitely have some favorite parks. For Pittsboro being a small and rural area, we have some spectacular parks. One of them right here in downtown is just a quiet little small slice between buildings, which is dedicated to the memory of our district court judge, Paige Vernon, who died of breast cancer several years ago. And it's a place that I love to go and sit, and it's quiet, and we have a lovely park south of town that's Rock Ridge, which has a zip line and all kinds of things for kids. It couldn't be more unlike the quiet of the one in town. We have a very excellent parks program, and we now have from Chatham Park a new 10-acre park, which is located right in the midst of their development, which has all kinds of swings and water feature and things like that. So we're very pleased with the parks that we have in Pittsboro. We're just beginning, by the way, to get into the concept of affordable housing in our community. Just to finish up that last question, we're really we need tremendously some additional units, but the presence of Chatham Park and the high-end housing there has made the gentrification issue a great deal more complex in Chatham than we previously had thought. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jen, do you have comments about your favorite nature spots?
Absolutely. We have Riverwalk in Hillsboro, which goes along the Eno River right through town. And at one end, you have the Occoneechee Speedway, which is a beautiful, quiet place to walk around there. And then you go the other way and you're at Occoneechee Mountain State Park with several miles of trails there. So that is really a crown jewel to have right in the middle of town. It's incredible. And then a new favorite discovered over the pandemic is the Confluence Natural Area, which is north of Hillsboro, another Eno gem. It's near the headwaters of the Eno River, and it's just stunning and beautiful. And then before I pass this, I wanted to say this at the beginning of this, but just thank you for having me. Thank you, Ellen and Maureen. I would love to send your PowerPoint to every new person that moves into town to help them understand how things work and what we do. And also a pleasure to get to meet you on the screen, Mayor O'Neal and Mayor Perry.
Thank you. And Elaine, what would you recommend in Durham for natural spots and parks?
Oh boy, I worked for Durham Parks and Recreation as a kid, so I could talk about this one forever, but I'll just try to highlight a couple. My favorite place to walk is the Al Bueller Trail, which circles the Duke Golf Course. It's about a 3-mile around, and with an extra part that they call a fitness trail. So it's about 4 miles around the Duke Golf Course. Another one would be West Point on the Eno. Another one would be Forest Hill Parks is one of my favorite parks. I swam there as a kid, played on the playground equipment there. We've had family reunions there, so I love that park. It's right in the city. And one place that I just recently found was a part of the Ellaby Creek watershed, and it's where one beaver family has built a dam, and it's behind a shopping center on Avondale, and it is absolutely amazing. You see all this traffic going down Roxborough Road, but just tucked right behind there is this beautiful marsh that the beavers have created, and I discovered that during COVID, and it is absolutely beautiful.
Sounds like it. Well, thank you so much, all three of you, and I'll turn it over to Krishna to wrap up for the evening, and we appreciate all of you being here so much.
Thank you so much. This is beyond our dreams. This is exactly what we wanted. You just wowed us. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone, for your terrific questions. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Maureen, for your help. We will see you next time. Please come back to us. We loved it. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you all. Nice meeting you, mayors. See you soon. Thanks, Ellen.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
See you
It was
soon, everyone.
terrific
Bye, everybody.
discussion.
Terrific. Please fill out the survey too, if you can take a moment.
Yes.
That's right.
Before our attendees leave, we would really appreciate you filling out this survey and giving us some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.